Hi, I'm Tom Field, Senior Vice President of Editorial with Information Security Media Group. I want to welcome you to today's webinar. It's entitled De-Risking the Cloud, What Paragliding Taught Me About Healthcare Privacy, Security, and Compliance in the Cloud. Your presenter today is Suhas Kelkar. He's Chief Product Officer with ClearDATA. Now, before I turn this over to our paraglider, let me give you a little bit of background on today's session. Just as it's necessary to think about security before throwing yourself into the clouds when you're paragliding, the same holds true for large healthcare organizations migrating data to the cloud. Whether it's your first flight in the cloud or you've been gliding for a while, there are security and compliance best practices that will keep you from crashing. In this session, Suhas will draw upon his 20-year experience with paragliding best practices. Those include risk management, pre-flight safety checks, proper training, and ability to assess your environment and translate how that maps to the privacy, security, and compliance for healthcare as it adopts and scales in the cloud. A bit about my organization, Information Security Media Group. We are a global education and intelligence firm. You might know us best by one or more of our 30-plus international media sites. These include Bank Info Security for financial services, Gov Info Security for the public sector, and of course Healthcare Info Security for the medical community. Every one of our sites is dedicated to providing education and news regarding information security, but they're specifically tailored to their individual sectors. With over 950,000 members registered to our sites, we've created a true information source that tackles the key issues of interest to our unique audience. Just a few notes of housekeeping. If you have any questions for Suhas during the course of this session, you can submit them anytime via the chat window on your screen. If any of you should experience any technical issues while viewing today's webinar, please take time to dial the number you see on your screen right now. If you dial extension 115, we do have technical support staff standing by to help. Also, I need to emphasize, the content being presented today is copyrighted material. It's meant for today's session and individual study purposes only. If you or your organization would like to use any of the information presented today, or if you're looking for customized training materials, please contact us. Now let's meet our sponsor today, ClearDATA. Healthcare professionals around the globe trust a ClearDATA high-trust certified cloud to safeguard their sensitive data and power their critical applications available across the major public cloud platforms. Healthcare organization customers receive one of the most comprehensive business associate agreements in the industry, combined with market-leading healthcare exclusive security and compliance solutions and multi-cloud expertise. ClearDATA's innovative platform of solutions and services protects customers from data privacy risks. It improves data management and scales their healthcare IT infrastructure, enabling them to focus on improving healthcare delivery every single day. And of course, now it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Suhas Kelkar, Chief Product Officer with ClearDATA. In his role, Suhas is responsible for the ClearDATA product portfolio, the strategic roadmap. He leads the ClearDATA product team, which consists of a highly talented group of product managers, cloud technologists, and software developers. Since joining ClearDATA, he's been able to establish a platform vision and deliver on next-generation compliance and assessment products. He has more than 20 years of success architecting and building scalable enterprise applications. And with that, let me turn you over now to Suhas Kelkar. Suhas, the show is yours. Literally, take us away.
Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you very much for that great introduction. And I'm going to start sharing my screen. I'm super excited about today's topic, mainly because it combines two of my passions, paragliding and cloud technologies. Now I know that paragliding is not a very common sport, and as such I'm going to start with a very brief description of this exciting form of flying. In paragliding, we take off from a mountain in oncoming gentle wings, and we are hanging underneath a glider made of nylon and plastic and suspended by thin Kevlar lines as you see in this picture. And when you take off, there is no engine. there is no motor that helps you fly. So you're essentially in a controlled descent. In other words, you're falling from the sky. Now, there are only two controls that you have. We call them brakes, as you see it in this picture. You pull on one brake, you turn right. You pull on the other brake, you turn left. And that's the only control you have. The challenge is to stay up in the air, finding invisible currents of hot air we call thermals. And on a good day, with lots of experience, you can stay up in the air for hours at a time, soaring the clouds. The day this picture was taken, I was able to fly for 4 hours, and it was really, really fun. Now, this brings up to the topic of cloud, to the topic of technology clouds. As Tom said earlier, I've spent many years architecting and designing SaaS products for cloud. In the process, I have 7 US patents in the area of cloud computing. Cloud computing trend shows that year-over-year growth, and ever since it was introduced. And more than 90% companies already are on the cloud. Healthcare industry, compared to some other industry verticals, has been slow to adopt cloud, but it's fast catching up. And because healthcare industry has some stringent standards and certifications that are designed to protect the most sensitive type of data we call patient data, healthcare industries, as they adopt cloud, have to be super careful. At the same time, as we all know, the recent pandemic has forced all organizations to go remote and has accelerated cloud adoption. And that has also resulted in the healthcare industry adopting cloud at a much faster rate. So it's a very good timing that we are looking at how do healthcare organizations go to cloud without being risky, and how do you de-risk your navigation to cloud. De-risking the cloud. What paragliding has taught me about healthcare privacy, security, and compliance in the cloud. Now, paragliding is a dangerous sport. You're essentially flying in unseen air, and you're flying a glider which has no rigidity. You're flying in a medium that is constantly changing and evolving. And there are elements that you must conquer that you cannot see. Elements such as the hot air thermals or the very dangerous rotors, and the weather can change at a moment's notice. So how do I approach paragliding and keep myself safe? I do that by learning about risk management. And before we can start talking about de-risking anything, we should understand what the risk is. There's plenty of research on risk management, and in one such article, the author Irene Revenko says that risk is a measured quantity, and it essentially is a product of probability of something happening multiplied by severity of harm it produces. So risk is essentially an equation of how often multiplied by how bad. Managing risk in healthcare organization can also be viewed from the lens of risk management. With cloud, IoT, wearables, and other technological advances, the attack surface continues to expand. So how do you stay safe, secure, and compliant and maintain privacy of your most sensitive data? Throughout this session, I'll be drawing upon the experience of paragliding and making correlation of how do you stay safe in technology clouds. At the end of the session, you would know what are the best practices for managing risks, what are the ClearDATA solutions that will help make it easier for you and your organization to accelerate your cloud journey. And I'm also going to do a demo of our application. And last but not least, you would have learned a little bit about this exciting sport of paragliding. So let's get started. There are 3 ways you can de-risk yourself in clouds. Number 1, assessing your environment. So when it comes to paragliding, assessing my environment means becoming an expert in understanding the weather. A good paraglider pilot is so good at predicting the weather that he can almost get a job as a meteorologist on their local TV station. Second thing I do always when I go to fly is what we call as pre-flight safety check. This is a predefined set of routine which essentially I go through to check whether I'm connected to the wing, whether my harness straps are in place, knowing where my reserve handle is, making sure that the reserve is packed correctly, so on and so forth. And doing this pre-flight check every single time in the same sequence is very, very important. Then you also assess conditions about the weather, how likely it is to change, the probability and severity of something going wrong. And you use all of that to make a decision whether or not to fly. In healthcare cloud, assessing your environments is also equally important. So what does it look like for healthcare cloud to assess your environment? First and foremost, you have to become an expert in understanding the various standards and certifications as they apply to your organization, while keeping in mind that these standards and certifications are in constant flux because they are constantly evolving and you need to stay on top of it. Second thing is doing a security risk assessment on an annual basis. This is not just a good idea, but it's also required by federal law. Anytime you have a patient data, you need to be doing a security risk assessment on an annual basis. And the third thing you might do in assessing your environment is knowing where your PHI resides. You need a PHI inventory. You can't really protect your PHI if you don't know where it is. And as you might know, in case of a breach or a security instance, if you cannot prove your blast radius, as in how many records were affected, you have to treat every patient record as if it was breached. And this can get really expensive very, very quickly. So in a nutshell, you have to understand the compliance requirements, you have to do your security risk assessment, and you have to have an accurate and up-to-date inventory of PHI. All of that goes into your first step, which is assessing your environments. Let me take an example of assessing condition as it pertains to clouds. There are many types of clouds: stratus clouds, cirrus clouds, cumulus clouds, cirrocumulus clouds, nimbostratus clouds, and many other types of clouds. To an untrained eye, they all may look alike, but they are very different from each other, and they can have very different characteristics and ultimately very different consequences if you decide to fly in them. Knowing these minute differences is a part of assessing your environment. When it comes to technology clouds, you would already know that there are different types of clouds there too. There are public clouds, private clouds, hybrid clouds, and just past the platform as a service clouds and service software as a service clouds. Just like the clouds I fly in, each of these technology clouds have their unique challenges and differences. So now let's look at the risk management tip number 2. And this is a big one: staying safe once you're in the cloud. Once you deploy in the cloud, you have to figure out how to stay safe in the cloud. And as you already know, nothing in cloud is static. Whether it's flying or whether it's transmitting PHI or other sensitive data, things are constantly evolving. You see the small black pack on my stomach in this picture? That's my command center. In that command center, I have a radio, I have a GPS, I have a variometer, and even a compass. All these instruments allow me to constantly monitor where I am and what's happening around me so that I can remain safe. There are things that I'm doing constantly, checking on other pilots, checking on the birds, checking on wind indicators that I can spot. And all of this is necessary to make sure I stay on top of the constantly changing environment. In the healthcare cloud, you must start secure and stay secure. And in just a few minutes, I'm going to show you a demo of ClearDATA Comply, and there we'll talk a lot more about that. Once you start secure, you also must have a continuous compliance in place. Once again, because things in cloud are constantly changing, even if you instantiated a cloud service in a compliant manner, some changes can occur afterwards that may cause it to drift out of compliance. So you need to have an automation in place that can constantly monitor your infrastructure and make sure you're not drifting from your desired compliance status. Of course, you need a rich set of dashboards to tell the exact state of compliance down to very minute details. And once again, when we go into our demo later on, I will show you some dashboards that ClearDATA platform provides. And then last but not least, you must prove your security and compliance via reports. And that's an important element when the auditors come in to check how well you are managing your security and compliance. Speaking of staying safe in the cloud, a common mistake I see folks get in trouble with is simple confusion around HIPAA eligibility versus HIPAA compliance. Whether it's AWS, Azure, or GCP, new cloud services are coming at a very fast rate. Many of these services are advertised as HIPAA eligible, and many times people confuse that with being HIPAA compliant. Some people think that because a service is HIPAA eligible, it's good to go and ready for PHI. However, even after cloud service is HIPAA eligible, you must make sure that it is configured correctly before it becomes HIPAA compliant. And like we talked about, we still have to worry about the configuration drift, which means you still need to have automation in place. A funny story to make this point, many years ago, when I was undergoing training and becoming a paraglider pilot, I would always fly under the supervision of my instructor. Then after completing the required hours of training, I earned a license to be an independent pilot. On the very first flight as an independent pilot, on my landing approach, I got drifted away and I landed in water, as you see in this picture. And landing in water on a paraglider can be very dangerous. Luckily, I survived and learned from that mistake. The point here is that even though I was eligible to fly on my own, I was not competent enough to do so. Same thing applies to a simple thing as HIPAA eligibility versus HIPAA compliance, and an area where ClearDATA can help. And then takes us to the last tip in staying safe in the cloud or de-risking the cloud is to plan ahead. Whether it's in paragliding or healthcare cloud, it's absolutely necessary to plan ahead. This photo that you're seeing here is me flying approximately 2,000 feet up in the air. I have taken off from a nearby mountain, and my goal is to land down at that tiny strip of beach that you see underneath me. And I have to do that with no engine or no power. So how do I do that? I do that by planning ahead. I have to carefully take into account my glide path, prevailing wind conditions, and then I use my training to navigate myself to the correct landing zone. And of course, not doing so can mean disastrous outcomes. In healthcare, more so than any other industry, you have to protect sensitive patient data. There are very strict rules and standards in place, HIPAA just being one of them. And for many, there is GDPR, GXP, NIST, and many, many more. Unless you are an expert at studying these regulations, and some of them are written as much as 20 years ago, and then translating that to the latest and greatest today's cloud technologies, you're likely to find your time and your team's time suddenly taken up with trying to just figure out this complexity of compliance and the complexity of cloud. And that's where really ClearDATA can help. Vulnerabilities and threats in public cloud are very difficult to identify. And if you miss them, it can be too late. However, given the value of the data and inevitability of the risk, the best an organization can do is mitigate the effects of that risk. Later, I'm going to show you how ClearDATA solutions will give you that 24/7 view into your compliance status, how we automate to keep you safe, and how we remediate in case of a compliance drift. And lastly, this photo really reminds me of this increasingly crowded public cloud environments. There are organizations which are migrating to cloud all the time. AWS, Azure, and GCP clouds are constantly innovating their cloud services. Hundreds of new cloud services are coming to public clouds every single year. Thousands of services are being modified every single year. So how do you make sure you're staying on top of all of that crowded cloud development? The other thing is that you have to also take into account the vulnerabilities that happen and the hackers that are out there to to penetrate your environments and to get some sensitive data out. In fact, the Office of the Civil Rights, OCR, actually has a breach portal, and it's often called HIPAA Wall of Shame. It has a list of all reportable breaches that are currently under investigation by Office of Civil Rights. And let me tell you, it is a big list. Just in last 3 months, there have been 100 reportable breaches, more than 100. And some of them were as low as 500 compromised patient records, but some of them were also a lot more, up to 500,000 patient records being breached. It can happen in an instant, and you can spend the rest of your time and your organization time trying to figure out what happened and to overcome the damage. And some organizations may never overcome it. The fines, the reputational damage, the loss of customers, and the loss of revenue will grind innovation to a halt. Flying a paraglider can be dangerous. If flying by yourself wasn't complicated enough, the skies can get crowded too. As you see in this picture, this is from a paragliding competition where all the different pilots are looking for the same lift. Being in public cloud, being in technology clouds, especially with sensitive healthcare data, can be very complicated. But there are ways to soar safely and securely. If you follow the basics of risk management, assessing your environment, staying safe in the clouds, and planning ahead, you can reap all the benefits of the cloud. Now I'm going to shift from talking about ClearDATA. I'm going to shift to the risk management topic to talking more about ClearDATA platform and solutions. And then shortly we will go into the demo of ClearDATA. So here's the cloud that I fly today. This is what we call the ClearDATA platform. As you can see, starting from the bottom, and we sit on top of the 3 public clouds, AWS, Google Cloud, and Azure. On top of that, we have our foundation services layer, which consists of things like a comprehensive compliance reference architectures. This is the secret sauce, which essentially brings various standards and certifications, our interpretation of how they map to the cloud services, what controls we have created for that, and then our platform automates all of that. So the compliance reference architecture becomes a foundational element of our platform. On top of that, we have our different solutions. And as you can see, we have ClearDATA Assess, ClearDATA Comply, and ClearDATA Locate. And these are different family of solutions, each geared to give you a different set of value that I'm going to talk about on the upcoming slides. On top of that is complemented with our managed services and professional services. Our team of healthcare security and compliance experts can take care of many of your needs as part of our managed services offering. And all of this under the protection of HITRUST and under HITRUST protection and a comprehensive VA. So with that brief introduction of the platform, let me talk a little bit more about the different solution areas that we have. First one is Assess, and it matches very well to the first tip that we talked about, which is assessing your environment. As we saw earlier, it is important to maintain a constant watch on your security and compliance posture. Doing an annual HIPAA security risk assessment is not only recommended, but is also required. ClearDATA Assess helps you to identify and act on security gaps in your environment before the intruder does. And we're going to take a quick look at what this solution looks like and how our team can help you achieve your annual security risk assessment requirement. The next is to stay safe once you're in the cloud. And to help with that, we have ClearDATA Comply suite of products. ClearDATA Comply helps you to remain secure and compliant in cloud. We do that by using our expertise in compliance and as our expertise in cloud. And we have developed, again, a comprehensive library of compliance reference architectures which contain the interpretation of various standards and regulations as they map to the latest cloud services. And then we have taken these compliance reference architectures and created many, many technical controls. These technical controls ensure all of your cloud services are instantiated in a compliant manner. And then on top of that, we have automated safeguards which make sure that you remain in compliance even after someone inadvertently makes non-compliant changes to your environment. And then lastly, compliance-rich dashboarding and reporting makes it very easy for you to demonstrate your culture of compliance. Once again, we're going to see this in the demo. And lastly, plan ahead. We have a suite of solutions called ClearDATA Locate. Locate gives you a way to identify, track, and use sensitive data thanks to some of the state-of-the-art natural language processing services that we use underneath. And it allows you to locate, trace, and mask sensitive patient data, and it becomes a very important tool in your tool chest. So with that, let's launch into our demo of ClearDATA, where I'm going to give you an overview of various ClearDATA solutions that help you, that keep you safe in the cloud. So I'm going to switch here and start sharing my demo environment. So as you can see, I'm logging into my browser here. ClearDATA is a ground-up SaaS application / SaaS solution, software as a service solution. And I just logged in, and you can see I have on the left-hand side a navigation bar that allows me to choose which area of solutions I want to be in. And I'm going to start with ClearDATA Assess. As I open up the ClearDATA Assess, I am presented with a landing page where you can see there are 4 tiles at the bottom, and these are essentially the 4 steps in your risk management, security and risk management assessment. The first step is to upload all of your relevant compliance documentation, and you can do that by adding your documentation by navigating here. Once you do that, you can now track all of your sensitive PHI inventory, and you can actually start doing that by going into your ePHI inventory screen in this manner. Once again, you can start actually entering your PHI inventory, and this becomes a very important step in your assessment because it is again required by SARA. Once you do that, our team of experts will take all of that input and create a comprehensive security risk assessment report, and that report will be ready in this portal. One of the important elements of that portal is to identify all the risks that are in your environment, and those risks get uploaded into the Assess platform, and you can start accessing those risks in this risk management plan. So as you can see, there are multiple risks that have been identified here, which I can scroll through. I can take any one of those risks, and you can see it has a risk level, it has a status, and I can start now assigning those out to my team members. And on top of that, I can start also putting in the controls that I would be implementing to mitigate that risk and the remediation progress notes. This really allows you to take the output of the security risk assessment and maintain a rigor of compliance that you can easily demonstrate at the end of the year to your auditors. With that quick view into Assess, I'm going to quickly move into ClearDATA Locate. ClearDATA Locate, again, is a collection of services, the ClearDATA Mask and ClearDATA Trace. The ClearDATA Mask is a service which allows you to take any data and mask it or redact it with the identifiers that you can see here. For example, you can take any text file or a comma separated values or a JPEG file or even a PDF file. You can upload that file, and then you can choose certain identifiers that you would want to mask. So for example, let's say I want to share my patient data, but I want to make sure that the name, age, and gender is not shared. I can choose those, and I can say I want to mask that data. At that point, the locate mask will essentially convert that data and make sure that all the sensitive patient identifiers are removed. Now, why do we do that? Why is this use case very useful? Is the fact that there is a wealth of information in these data sets which can be used for machine learning models. And with this kind of service, which also can be automated through APIs, you are able to take that vast data sets and use it to your advantage. Whether you're doing artificial intelligence and machine learning, you can now use those data sets without compromising your entire data. And then Trace is another set of services that allows you to trace PHI as it flows through your Kubernetes clusters. So it's an advanced service that allows you to essentially see how your PHI moves in your environment. Once again, very important to establish the blast radius and to make sure that you maintain a clear understanding of your PHI in your environment. With that, I'm going to move to Comply. Comply is our compliance suite of product and solutions. As you can see, as I navigate into Comply, I'm presented with a high-level dashboard. That high-level dashboard shows me 4 cloud accounts. 2 of them are AWS accounts. One of them, as you can see with this logo, is an Azure account, and then one of them is a GCP account. ClearDATA Comply is a multi-cloud solution. It allows you to see your compliance status across the different clouds in a single pane of glass. More and more organizations are navigating towards a multi-cloud environment. So it becomes really important to see all of those environments from a single source of truth, such as this one. So what can you do when you have this kind of visibility? Let me show you what happens when I navigate into one of those accounts. As I navigate into one of those accounts, I can see that there's a bunch of indicators, and those indicators are designed to give me a quick view into compliance of my infrastructure. As you can see, there are 210 evaluations that took place in this account in the last 24 hours. My compliance when it comes to storage is 94%. My databases look pretty good, 100%. Networking is at 66%, so on and so forth. I can also navigate back to my different accounts, and I can now start to see certain things that I can look at. So for example, I can look at all the alerts in my environment, and I can go back into timeline, and I can see various things that are happening in my account. As I navigate into these different accounts, I can also see by these indicators that there are certain alerts that have taken place in these accounts. So here I can see in last month in this particular account, AWS account, variety of alerts have been posted. Alerts are things that we notice happening in the environment that you need to pay attention to. For example, no multi-factor authentication sign-in happened. Once again, this could be a legitimate action that happens in your environment, but we as a compliance expert, we want to make sure you are paying attention to this. So we would highlight this as an alert. I can go back to my different accounts. I can see in this case, in this Azure account, there are some remediations that are taking place. So I can click on the remediations, and I can see that all these things are being automatically remediated in my Azure account. For example, intrusion detection, automated safeguard, intrusion detection got kicked in because the service was monitoring, the service that was being monitored was changed in a non-compliant manner. Another safeguard, encryption in flight, was kicked in because there was some change in the underlying asset. Again, the asset is listed here, the full path of the asset, and there was a non-compliant change that took place. So once again, we are constantly monitoring your infrastructure and making sure any drift that happens in your environment, we bring it back into compliance. And how does all of this is tied together? This is the secret sauce that I talked about earlier. So these are all of our automated safeguards And you can filter them by different clouds. I can choose to see just Azure or safeguards. I can look at AWS, or I can look at them all. I can also navigate into it and see some of the more details of this particular area. For example, in this case, I'm looking at AWS ALB. I'm looking at standards and certifications. In this case, HIPAA 45 CFR 164.308 A12D, and it has a specific language listed here as part of the HIPAA regulation. We have taken time to take this and create an interpretation of that particular standard, and that interpretation, you can see it here, and then how that interpretation is converted into a technical control is listed here. And once again, you can do this for any of the cloud services, and for each of the cloud services, for each of these different standards and regulations, there is interpretation involved and there is automation involved. So as you can see, it becomes a daunting task for an organization to be able to build all of this on their own. And that is exactly and precisely where ClearDATA comes into picture. And lastly, and not least, is the reports. This is what really makes the ClearDATA platform shine, because you can essentially start with any cloud, with any of the subscription, and you can actually run different types of reports, whether it's a full environment detail or full environment trend. And you can see I ran this on this particular subscription in Azure, and it gives me service by service compliance across all the technical controls. And so now I can really go and drill down into this particular technical control and make sure why am I only at 61% and what can I do to make these remainder of 7 technical controls to pass. I can also look at the trend report, and the trend report really tells me the compliance as it takes place over a period of time. I can go back 30 days, I can go back 60 days, or I can go back even longer. And this really shows you a compliance over time for this particular Azure subscription, and this becomes immensely useful in proving that you have been taking or doing your due diligence in making sure your environments remain secure, compliant, and private. And with that, I'm going to shift over back to my presentation and just cover a remainder of few slides. So one of the important elements here to remember is, you don't have to go at it alone. We at ClearDATA can help your organization accelerate, automate, remediate, and demonstrate. Now let me explain what those 4 areas are. Accelerate. When a healthcare organization wants to move to cloud, you have to make sure your sensitive PHI information is kept secure and private. This is our focus. We are 100% focused on helping companies such as yourself in keeping your environment secure and private. We have helped hundreds of companies build cloud strategies, build architecture, create compliance frameworks, and then go to the CISO compliance teams and be able to go drive innovation. We will help you navigate where to begin your cloud journey and then realize the benefits of cloud. Next is automation. A lot of what happens in the public cloud and compliance is manual. One of our flagship features, automated safeguards, which covers many cloud services, helps you to automatically configure and keep all those services compliant. And then we can monitor all of these technical controls 24/7 to make sure everything remains secure and compliant. Then we look at remediate. So we help our automated safeguards and controls that are put in place. They're automatically making sure any compliance drift that happens is brought back into compliance by remediating the unwanted changes. And then last but not least, we help you innovate, because now that you have taken the pain of the security and compliance out of your plate, you are able to focus on your core business, and that allows your teams to innovate much faster rate. So in a sense, we eliminate the burden of security and compliance and privacy so you can focus on your applications and leverage the benefit of cloud. Remember, when we are focusing on your privacy, security, and compliance, you can focus on your goals, your business objectives, and your innovation. We work with organizations across the healthcare, from payers to providers, life sciences to pharma to healthcare IT. Some of our customers have been in cloud for years, and others are jumping in for their first flight. Because we are HITRUST certified and healthcare exclusive, we understand the unique challenges of this industry, and we are here to help. We, as a special benefit for the viewers of this webinar, we are offering a no-cost evaluation of your cloud security posture with ClearDATA Comply. And if you would like to take advantage of that, please contact us at cleardata.com/contact us. And you mentioned the code Paragliding, and you will be able to take advantage of this limited time offer. I highly encourage you, because without any obligation, you will be able to see your infrastructure and how compliant it is with just a few clicks. Once again, thank you very much, and I'll see you all in the cloud. Thank you, and back to you, Tom.
Excellent, Suhas. Thank you so much. Of course, we have time to take some questions now. I want to remind attendees, if you've not submitted questions yet, you still may via the chat window that's on your screen right now. We won't have time for every question, but for those questions that we can't answer in the course of this session, we'll be sure to get responses back to you via email. That said, I've got some questions in. Suhas, first question I have for you. My organization has been on the AWS cloud for a couple of years already. What can ClearDATA give me that I don't have already?
Yeah, that's a common question that we get asked. And the answer to that is that we have years of healthcare exclusive expertise, coupled with assurance of our HITRUST certification and team of cloud certified engineers. The clouds do not specialize in healthcare. The cloud providers, they are not specializing in healthcare. We are. All we do is we focus all of our energy in understanding the various compliance standards and requirements and understanding the cloud evolution that happens every single day. And we bring all of these two worlds together. So it really helps you to take help from us, because we are simultaneously staying on top of this constant changing environments on both sides, on the compliance side as well as on the cloud side. And then our platform really bridges the gap of making sure you remain secure, compliant, and privacy at all times.
Next question for you. Can you talk more about what it is your team measures in a security risk assessment?
Absolutely. The security risk assessment examines the organization's technical, administrative, and physical safeguards in order to provide an analysis of an organization's compliance and security. As I said before, SRA is federally mandated by HIPAA, and the first thing the Office of Civil Rights, OCR, will ask to see in an event of reportable breach is, where is your most up-to-date security risk assessment? So our SRA assessment includes some essential components. It includes things like creation and review of your EPHI inventory to determine where electronic and other data is located. It includes things like examination of multiple items under each of the 3 safeguards that are required by HIPAA, and those being the administrative, physical, and technical safeguards. It includes assessment of current HIPAA security compliance operations, evaluation of existing security policies and procedures, the risk remediation plan, identifying the high, medium, and low risks with recommendations appropriate to the size of organization, and then the platform that provides a risk management where you can demonstrate your culture of compliance through the ongoing process of updating those risks and mitigations. So that's the kind of details of what's included in our SRA.
Suhas, what are some of the most common security gaps you find? And are there some things that you see over and over?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Over years, we have really gotten a lot of experience working with healthcare organizations. We have hundreds of healthcare customers, and through that, we have learned and seen a lot of patterns. One of the first one is that, believe it or not, organizations don't really know where their PHI is. And if you don't know where your PHI is, then how can you protect it? With all the different types of technologies coming our way, it is becoming very easy to lose track of PHI. And that becomes one of the first things that we notice, that the organization really doesn't have a handle on where their PHI is. Second one is lack of encryption. It's amazing how often we see lack of encryption. Simple things like Amazon Simple Storage Service or any other cloud storage, it is very easy to instantiate, and it is also very easy to instantiate in an unencrypted manner. And then you start using it without knowing that there is no encryption on it, and it becomes an easy target for hackers to hack into. And then lastly, outdated or existent policies and procedures. Those are the three things I think I've seen the most when we deal with various customers.
Next question I have for you. Suhas, with a complied solution, can your reports provide an auditable trail that I can use for annual audits?
They do. We actually provide a very detailed compliance reports that are available as part of ClearDATA Comply. And as I showed you in the demo, we have full environment details. We can also do trend reports that can show you over time how your compliance has evolved. And along with all of those reports, it becomes very easy for you to demonstrate your culture of compliance as it's implemented in your organization.
Suhas, this next question could lead to a webinar all its own. Question is, my organization is just now migrating to the cloud. What are some of the mistakes you see organizations new to the cloud making?
Yeah, I think a common mistake that we see is when the team is new to the cloud and they're all excited about using the latest and greatest cloud services. Now, once again, the cloud services are advertised as HIPAA eligible, and the engineers and developers who are working on these, creating new applications, they are not the compliance experts. So sometimes they don't really understand the minor differences between HIPAA eligible versus HIPAA compliance, and hence they go ahead and start using some of these services, start putting their sensitive PHI onto the cloud, and that starts to create a cascading effect of exposing your organization to vulnerabilities and hackers. So misconfiguration becomes a huge risk. Misconfiguration of cloud services, not understanding the difference between HIPAA eligibility versus HIPAA compliance, and then bringing it all this together from the various certifications and standards that keep evolving. So you might have implemented it at a certain point of time, but then that standard certification evolves, and then you're in trouble. At the same time, you may have done some configuration on your cloud services, but the cloud services itself evolved, hence you could be in trouble. So staying on top of all these ever-evolving scenarios becomes a common mistake.
And one last question for you. One member of my C-suite is still skeptical of the cloud from a security perspective. What can we say to him?
There's plenty of data points out there on that front. Gartner predicts, for example, the public cloud as an infrastructure will suffer at least 60% fewer security incidents than in the traditional data center. So analysts are predicting that cloud is inherently safer than the traditional data centers by as much as 60%. So in general, I truly believe that cloud is far more secure than on-premise. And in fact, there's a great article on this in the Smarter with Gartner newsletter that suggests that CIOs must change their line of questioning from is the cloud secure to am I using cloud securely? Very minute difference. Is the cloud secure versus am I using the cloud securely? Because the problem that occurs when there is a security incident is typically because the customer did not properly configure something. It is not the fault of the cloud, underlying cloud service, but it's the fault of whoever configured it incorrectly. And additionally, the cloud frees you up from other things like labor-intensive patching that is ripe for human errors. People come to cloud for security, automation, elasticity. Gartner also predicts that through 2025, 99% of cloud security failures will be customers' fault. And really, that's where healthcare organizations, even some of the biggest names in the industry, are coming to ClearDATA.
Suhas, very well said. Again, I appreciate your time, your insight today, everything you shared with us, and thank you also for taking time to answer each of these questions.
I greatly appreciate it, Tom. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
And of course, let's thank our attendees. They took time out of their day to attend this session. We're grateful for that. I do trust that today's discussion provided valuable data points to enable you and your organization to be even better prepared to tackle the cloud challenges discussed here today. I look forward to seeing you again at one of our upcoming sessions. Until then, for Information Security Media Group, I'm Tom Field. Thanks so much for attending today.